Okay, so we've all been there, right? You're just going about your day and bam, busted lip.
Ah, those unexpected encounters are never fun.
Tell me about it. It's like a rite of passage, though, isn't it? A busted lip? Maybe a rogue frisbee. Or maybe, when you were a kid and you took a tumble.
It's definitely one of those injuries that's almost impossible to avoid, especially for
Especially for kids, right?
especially for kids.
So today we're doing a deep dive on busted lips because, well, we found this article and we thought, everybody's experienced this at some point, so let's get into it.
It's surprisingly common, and there's a lot more to it than you might think.
Yeah, so we wanted to dig into, like, the home remedies, when to call the doctor. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's rewind a bit. What exactly are we talking about when we say busted lip, beyond just, looking pretty rough?
Yeah, well, the article focuses on those telltale signs like the
Uh-huh.
bruising, the swelling, maybe even some cuts. But I think it's interesting to think about what's actually happening beneath the surface.
Yeah, break it down for us.
So your lips, they're much more delicate than we give them credit for, packed with blood vessels, sensitive tissue.
Oh, I believe it.
So when they take a hit, it's no wonder you get that instant, visible damage.
That makes a lot of sense. And it actually reminds me, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like athletes especially always have busted lips. And kids, of course.
Right, always.
Is there a reason why those groups seem so prone to them?
Well, it's a combination of things. Anatomy plays a big role, and of course, gravity. Think about kids, right?
Yeah.
They've got these bigger heads in proportion to their bodies, which basically
Well,
means
it's face plants.
more face plants. Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, you factor in that whole developing coordination thing,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a recipe for bumps and bruises. Especially those lips, they stick out.
It's true. They're right there. Okay, that explains the kids. But what about athletes? They're a whole other category, it seems like.
Totally. But again, think about what they're doing. These are people who are constantly in motion, pushing their limits, often in close proximity to, other people or objects flying
So
around.
things are happening fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One wrong move and bam, busted lip. It kind of comes with the territory.
So you've taken a hit. You've got a busted lip. What now? What do you do?
Well, the good news is you can handle a lot of this right at home.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, the article highlights a bunch of different home remedies, and honestly, you probably already have most of these things just sitting in your kitchen.
I love when that happens. So walk us through it. What's first on the list?
Well, they say good old soap and water is the best place to start.
Just the basics.
Exactly. For cleaning the wound, you really don't need to get fancy.
So no need to go grabbing the, rubbing alcohol.
No, actually, using those harsh antiseptics, it can actually do more harm than good.
Really?
Yeah, it can actually damage that healthy tissue and even slow down your body's natural healing process.
Wow, okay. Noted. So gentle cleansing it is. What about that saltwater rinse?
A classic.
I've always heard that's good for a busted lip, but what's the science behind it? Why does that work?
It's a natural antiseptic,
Okay.
so it helps prevent infection,
Yeah.
but it reduces inflammation and it also promotes healing. It does like three things.
Wow, it's like a triple threat.
Right.
I love that. And of course, another one of those classic remedies, the cold pack. Can't go wrong there, right?
Never underestimate the power of a little ice.
Why is it so effective?
Well, the cold, it constricts those blood vessels. So that helps minimize the bleeding, it reduces the swelling, and then there's that added bonus of just numbing the area a bit, which,
Which always helps.
yeah, a little pain relief goes a long way.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of pain relief, the article also mentions over-the-counter pain relievers, because sometimes those home remedies are great, but sometimes you need a little something extra, right?
Sometimes you just need an assist.
Exactly. So talk to me about those.
So things like ibuprofen or acetaminophen, those can be really helpful. They're really good at reducing both pain and inflammation without interfering with the healing process.
Okay, good to know. Now we're getting into some of the home remedies that I was not expecting.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Baking soda.
Baking soda.
Baking soda? Really?
Yeah, right. You don't necessarily think of it for a busted lip, but
Right.
it's one of those things that's surprisingly effective at reducing that inflammation and really helping that healing process.
How does it even work?
Well, it creates this alkaline environment on the skin,
Okay.
and that discourages the bacterial growth,
Oh, interesting.
and it soothes the area.
Okay, I'm going to have to try that one. It just goes to show sometimes the most unexpected things. Okay, next one on the list of home remedies is tea bags. Tell me about that one.
So tea bags are great because of the tannins they contain.
The tannins, what do they do?
Tannins are amazing at constricting blood vessels. So if you're dealing with any bleeding, applying a cool, damp tea bag can actually help stop it.
Oh, wow. So it's like a natural astringent.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. All right, last but not least on this list of home remedies, we have turmeric.
Ah, turmeric, a classic for a reason.
It really is like I feel like it's having a moment.
It really
But
is.
for good reason. Why is it so good for busted lips?
Well, turmeric has been used for like centuries in
Yeah.
traditional medicine, right?
It's not new.
Yeah. And modern science is finally catching up to what people have known for a long time.
That's so often the case.
I know. Turmeric contains curcumin, which is a powerful compound that has both anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties.
All right.
So using a turmeric paste on a busted lip,
Mm.
it can actually help reduce swelling, fight infection, and even speed up that healing process.
Love it. It's like nature's neosporin or something.
It's true. I love that we're talking about all these home remedies,
Yeah.
but it's important to acknowledge that not all busted lips are created equal.
Right.
There are definitely times when it needs a little more than just TLC.
Absolutely. And the article does a great job of outlining those red flags, those situations when, okay, it's time to see a doctor. This is beyond the scope of a home remedy.
Right, you got to know when to call in the professionals.
For sure. So let's talk about some of those red flags because those are important for everyone to know. What's the first one we should talk about?
Well, I think the most obvious one is severe or persistent bleeding.
Okay. Yeah.
We're not talking about, just a little bit of blood.
Right. A little trickle.
Right. But if you're applying pressure and it's not clotting and the bleeding doesn't stop after, a good 10 minutes,
Yeah.
that's a sign that something a little more serious might be happening, and it's definitely time to get it checked out.
Okay. So bleeding check. What about the actual cut itself? I imagine size probably matters there, right?
It does. The article specifically mentions cuts wider than an inch as a red flag.
Okay.
Anything that size, it's a pretty significant gash.
Mm.
It's probably going to need stitches to heal properly.
Stitches, definitely not something you want to be doing at home.
Definitely not a DIY project.
Ugh.
And while we're on the topic of things best left to the professionals, difficulty breathing or having trouble opening your mouth after a lip injury, that's another big one to watch out for.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That sounds kind of scary, actually. What makes those symptoms so serious?
Well, when you get swelling in the lips, it can actually obstruct your airway,
Oh, right.
which
Yeah.
obviously makes it really hard to breathe.
Makes sense.
And if you're having trouble opening your mouth, it could be a sign of a jaw injury or some other kind of complication.
Okay, yeah. Not good.
So in those cases, it's really important to get checked out by a doctor right away.
Breathing, always important. Can't forget about that. So breathing issues, big cuts, lots of bleeding, those all make sense. The article also mentions numbness, severe pain, or fever as red flags.
Yeah, those are all kind of in the same category. They can be signs of a more serious injury or even an infection. It's like your body's way of telling you, hey, something's not right here.
Don't ignore the signs.
Exactly. And ignoring those signs can sometimes make things worse.
So true. Better safe than sorry, as they say. Speaking of being safe, you mentioned infection earlier. The article brings up tetanus shots.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Especially if you have a cut that involves like a rusty object or something like that.
Yeah. Tetanus is no joke.
Not messing around with tetanus.
No. And those rusty objects, they can be a breeding ground for those bacteria.
Yuck.
So if you're not up to date on your tetanus vaccination, a quick visit to the doctor after an injury like that, highly recommended.
Absolutely. Better to be safe than sorry. All right, last red flag on the list. This one sounds pretty intense. Loose teeth or possible head or bone injuries.
Yeah, those definitely warrant a trip to the doctor.
So a busted lip might be like the most obvious injury, but it's important to think about what else might have been impacted, especially if there was a strong impact to the face.
Exactly. It's easy to focus on the most obvious thing,
Yeah.
but there could be more going on.
Like a domino effect, one injury could signal something else. Okay, let's say, hypothetically, of course, let's say I was playing Frisbee and I may or may not have gotten a busted lip,
Hypothetically.
hypothetically. And let's say I'm in the clear on all those red flags, so I'm doing my home remedies, I'm taking care of it. What's the healing timeline look like for something like that?
So most busted lips, they actually heal pretty quickly, which is good news.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, so we're talking a few days to a few weeks, depending on the severity. The swelling usually goes down within 48 hours. So that's the first hurdle. And then the lip skin regeneration itself, that usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, that's not bad. That's manageable. What about scarring? Because, it's your face. You don't want to walk around with a scar forever.
Right. The good news is that most minor lip injuries heal without a trace.
That's a relief.
The skin on your lips regenerates pretty quickly.
Okay, good.
Now, if you have a deeper cut You might have a bit of a scar, but even those tend to fade over time, especially if you take care of them properly.
That's good to know. All right, so there you have it. Busted lips, we've all been there, but now you know exactly what to do about them.
Exactly. You're armed with the knowledge everything from home remedies to when to call the doctor.
And I love that we talked about prevention a little bit too, because honestly, sometimes just wearing a mouth guard during sports or just being a little bit more aware of your surroundings can go a long way.
It really can prevent a world of hurt, literally.
It really can. Well, this has been a very informative deep dive, to say the least.
Absolutely.
But it makes me think, we focus so much on the physical healing, but I imagine there's a whole other psychological aspect to these kinds of injuries, right? Especially when it's your face.
Oh, absolutely.
Like our faces are how we present ourselves to the world.
Right. It's a big part of our identity.
So I'm really curious about that. Like, how do those more visible facial injuries impact people's self-esteem, their body image? Is there a social stigma attached to them? Those are questions I'm going to be thinking about.
It's a whole other layer to this, isn't it?
It really is. Something to ponder. Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this deep dive. As always, thanks for joining us as we explored the ins and outs of, well, this time, busted lips. Till next time.